Hi, this is Mark. Welcome back to my channel, What Burns My Ass. This is a channel where I tell you the things that burn my ass, and you tell me whether or not they burn your ass too. So, this is the interview with Brian Williams on the Late Night with Seth Meyers show. And it is pretty much just nothing but a bunch of Democrats shelling. Most of the national news anchors were shills for the Democrat Party. And I don't know how anybody didn't see that, but it was definitely true. And, that's just, you're supposed to be a newscaster, not a news commentator. And if you're going to be a news commentator, then that's what the show should be called. It should be a a news commentation show, not called NBC News or ABC News or CBS News. Again, I'm repeating myself from the past, but I mean, Walter Cronkite, he just, he read you the news and he kept his opinion out of it. And that's what I think if the national news organization want to get their listeners back, that's what they really need to go back to. But let's go ahead and listen to their discussion about the Donald Trump cabinet picks and of course their negative takes on all that. And also, but I really like Brian Williams. You're going to see why.
We're back with Brian Williams. You covered the first Trump presidency. I certainly will admit when that one ended, I didn't think we'd have another one, but here we are. It does seem a little, the guardrails are maybe down. Do you think that's alarmist to say, or do you think that based on his cabinet picks seems accurate?
No one who's been paying attention should be surprised at the list of cabinet names coming out, which you have faithfully covered in Closer Look every night, including tonight. This is what we were told to expect.
And he weirdly is a man of his word with who he is picking. I mean, I wish he'd been a man of his word on other stuff, but here we are. They debated today releasing the House ethics report on Matt Gaetz. That was something that, at least in the early days, it seemed like maybe they would do. But of course, the Republican Party tends to go along with what Donald Trump says. Are you surprised that they're not going to release it?
I am not surprised. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene's threat over this past weekend that there's a lot that could come out about other sitting Republicans if they open this Pandora's box was notable.
Yeah, well, the threats do seem to resonate because it does seem like they might actually back them up.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Of course, what they said about Donald Trump's cabinet picks, of course, it's always got to be negative. I mean, he could have picked Pete Buttigieg and made him Secretary of State, and there'll still be people on the Democrat side who will complain. Well, he's gay, but you're influencing him, and there's got to be something wrong. And it wouldn't matter who he picked. They're always going to complain. Now, what they're doing with Matt Gaetz, if Matt Gaetz is actually liable for what he did, I mean, if he actually did what they accuse him of, covering that up is a huge mistake on the part of the Republicans. And of course, I love how they say that, if they cover it up, that the skeleton is going to come out about a bunch of other Republicans. But I guarantee you just as well, if they cover up, if the same thing happened on the Democrat side, there'd be just as many skeletons on the closet on that side of the aisle. So to sit here and say that, the Republicans are covering up for a bunch of Republicans are, basically they're accusing, I think they're kind of trying to accuse Matt Gaetz of being a pedophile because it had something to do with this young girl who was 17 years old. But irrelevant of that, he's not been found guilty. But I think the Republicans should look into it themselves. They should want to know if he actually did anything he's accused of. And if he's not, then, exonerate him. And if he did do it, you don't make excuses for it. You kick his ass out. I mean, that burns my ass. You can't sit there and complain when the Democrats cover up for themselves, and then you turn around and do the exact same thing for the people in your party, because that just makes you a hypocrite. Anyways, let's go on with the rest of this, and you're going to see towards the end. I mean, you're going to see, Brian Williams is actually kind of a great guy, but again, I'm going to show you the disconnect between him and me. And by the way, at the end, I'm going to kind of give you my point of view on MAGA, because mine's different than Donald Trump's. But I mean, it kind of has the same thing, but you'll see what I mean.
Yeah. The Dems, the Democratic Party lost a lot of white working class voters. Certainly their lead with non-white working class voters was eaten into by the Donald Trump and the Republicans. It did feel like the Democratic Party under Joe Biden did a lot of things for working class voters. Certainly inflation was a giant issue. Messaging as well. Do you feel like they just failed to message what they had done for and had planned for the economy?
It is tough love time for the Democratic Party. I think it needs to be stripped down and rebuilt. I think that means a change in leadership. I want to know who thought it was a good idea that Joe Biden stand for another 4 years at 80 years of age and 37% popularity. So then that saddled the party with a British-like short campaign season for them. I think it's insulting when members of the working class, which the Democratic Party has lost entirely in our lifetimes, to insist the economy is doing great. A 12-pack of Bounty is $40. Rich folks don't feel that. Poor folks already switched to Sparkle during the COVID, during the lockdown. And I think telling them that the NASDAQ is gangbusters is further insulting. It's insulting. I think the biggest unforced error of the Biden administration by far was the border. To tell people it's not a problem is insulting. For the working class to see incoming migrants getting welcome bags, debit cards, and motel rooms is probably insulting as well. So there's a lot of work to do. You know, it was when they handed out camo hats that said Harris Walls, and the Democrats they were kind of charmed by that. Their party has gone quinoa, and the rest of America's eating at Cracker Barrel. And so it was kind of an ironic use of something millions of Americans put on their heads to start their day every day.
So here you go. I mean, he's right on the money with 90% of what he said. I mean, the Democrats we're trying to tell American people that, oh, well, you know, inflation's down to just pre-COVID levels. No, it's not. Not if you're paying your rent, not if you're paying your car insurance, not if you're paying your medical insurance, not if you're paying your utilities, not if you're buying gas. I mean, to lie to the American people the way the Democrats did is what cost them the election. So Brian Williams has that 100% on par. Completely agree with that. But I mean, to narrow it down to just missed messages is a little disingenuous. I mean, there's a lot more to what they did and why he lost and why Donald Trump did than just the fact that they didn't cater to the working class. But you know, let's go and listen, and I'll give you a little more of my.
No, at the same time, and I take your point. You know, obviously you have Donald Trump, you know, doing a half a shift at a McDonald's and wearing a trash reflector vest and pretending, you know, basically play acting as a garbage man.
One does.
Yes, as one does. So it does feel like, right? It's almost like the Democrats have to figure out a different way to message, while the Republican Party has this way that nobody would have ever thought would be effective that Donald Trump is doing.
Yeah, they need to reach out to America again and be less about what's called suicidal empathy, worrying so much about minority groups in society and in your party that you win the argument, but you don't win the election. This is up to them to decide. Are they tired of winning the argument, but not the election?
So that's a perfect point right there. I mean, honestly, a lot of what they did, they said that they want to bring the races together, but a lot of what they did separated. I mean, made race relations worse. Like talking about reparations and all these other things, and also talking about, you know, the LGBTQ community. And I mean, it's hey, listen, I'm part of that community, but I don't want children being transitioned in their teens. And they try to lie to the American public, saying that, you know, those gender affirming drugs didn't damage these children, or cutting off their genitals at early age would have no repercussions. It would just make them happier. Everybody saw that, and then expect voters to vote for somebody who's going to say, "Well, your kid could become a different gender at school, and we're not going to tell you. You know, we're going to keep that a secret, and we're going to let them do these medical things on themselves without your knowledge." That's insane. I mean, that's what's caused the backlash. That's what's caused the conservative wave that started, because people are going, no, you can't do this. The parents have a right to know what their child is doing in school. And, if they're changing their gender or calling them, that's something that the parent should handle and deal with the child. Now, of course, if the child is actually truly trans and in the long run becomes trans, that's fine. Okay, great. But in most cases, it was not. And I think people saw that. So that backlash came on to the LGBT community. I didn't call it the LGBTQ. I want to call it the GLB community. I think it should go back to that, because trans is a totally separate issue than sexual orientation. I think I've mentioned that before in some prior videos. Anyways, let's go on with this interview, and I'm going to give me a little. But yeah, they lost touch with the American voters. They really did, and hiding things, and then they were finding immigrants with $12,000 food stamp balances and $25,000 available for cash on a social services card. But then they gave $750 to the people that went through the hurricane. For a family of 5, they got $750. But a Haitian was walking around with 12 grand on her debit card. I mean, on her social service card. This is the disconnect that Brian Williams is talking about, and and he's right. He's really right. The Democrats really need to change their whole plan of attack. Let's move on.
Well, certainly they had done well every election since 2016. And so do you think they were wrong to think they were on some sort of winning streak based on the fact that they had outperformed expectations?
Probably. And I think the other lesson we learned this election year is that polling isn't worth a damn. If you want to see what polling used to do, follow the betting indexes. They were right. Yeah. They were almost all right. But not the pollsters.
But see, I follow, when I bet on football, it's never right. They tell me who's going to win, and then I'm just losing money left and right.
Well, some of that is the booze.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
So he's got a good sense of humor.
Putting it out there.
The pollsters, I don't know. They just lied, and it's so easy to skew numbers. I took statistics in college, and it's very easy to skew results, especially if you use what's called a control group. And your control group is made up of the biased side, that you're trying to show for. You're going to get the wrong results. And that's what 90% of these Democrat pollsters did. They basically sampled the people that were going to say what they wanted to hear. So, of course, their polls were all wrong. All the polls, I watched the Rasmussen report, he's considered one of the most accurate pollsters in the world. So that's the guy I'm going to watch. I'm not going to watch these other idiots in the Washington Post, which is obviously also a shill for the Democrat Party. As some of these other pollsters that work for the national news, again, the biasness in those national news organizations, of course, they're going to sample they're going to sample the people that's going to give them the results they wanted. And that's what happened. I never once thought Kamala Harris was actually in the lead during this entire election. I did not, because I listened to the people that actually followed the criteria of a pollster, and didn't just poll certain segments of the population that fits your criteria. We'll move on.
You did your election night, which, as you mentioned, 10 hours plus. You also emceed, what was it, your local firehouse?
Yeah,
gala?
I signed off that night, 3 o'clock Eastern time. I said, thanks.
3 a.m. Eastern time.
3 a.m. I said, this has been great. Thanks to Amazon. Thanks to Jonathan Wald, our producer, Glenn Weiss, our director. My next gig, I said, my hand to God, is to MC my firehouse dinner in Point Pleasant, New Jersey on Saturday night.
And you're back. There you go. Congratulations.
Yep.
That's a more important gig, I think.
Yep. It went well. Slightly smaller audience than the global Amazon audience, but nobody hit subscribe and save. So
that's
I
good.
got that going for me.
You're still volunteering at
Yes, I am.
Gotcha.
It continues to be the joy of my life. I've been doing it since 18, 41-year career, got in the way of responding to fires, but I'm back at it now.
Yeah, that's really good. It's very exciting. Nobody should be excited when there's, their house is on fire. But in Point Pleasant, it's kind of cool to think you might show up.
Yeah, it's nice, and it's that's the socioeconomic group I was born into. So that's what makes me so angry to see an American population not being spoken to by one of the major political parties. There's been great change. The Democrats have become the fancy party.
But it's so strange because, of course, they do still win a bigger share of like the non-white working class. So they are speaking to someone.
Yeah, they are.
I mean, I understand that it's getting eaten into, but at the same time, like we're talking about it like, what, again, I agree. They have to communicate better.
That's his distortion. Okay, yes, a lot of actually mainly female blacks went for Kamala. But a huge portion of the male black population in the United States, African Americans, went for Donald Trump, a large portion of that. And here's the thing. The only reason that it's still a majority of the Democrat Party, because that's been drilled into black culture and African American culture for the last 50 years, 60 years. So it's disingenuous to say that it's just shifting a little bit. It shifted a lot. A huge number, a double digits shift. And he's trying to make it seem like, well, it was just a small, no, it was not. It was huge. It was a landslide. And, of course, he's always going to put his twist so that the Democrats don't look so inept. So anyways, we'll listen on.
To the working class voter. But I sometimes think it's a little unfair to say, they're elite when certainly Joe Biden stood up for unions.
Yep.
And, and I think it's very fair to say that Donald Trump and certainly Elon Musk will not. And there was a time where that meant something, and I don't quite know why it doesn't anymore.
See, again, another, he's just wrong. Okay, first of all, the UAW backed Donald Trump, not Joe Biden or Kamala. There's a lot of reasons for that. And so to sit there and say that, Elon Musk and Donald Trump are not going to promote unions is actually insane. It's not true. I think, these are just talking points on a show. And I don't think he's being honest with himself or honest with the American people. And we're going to see, of course. I'm actually very optimistic about the upcoming Donald Trump, his next 4 years. But again, we'll see.
To use a big word, there is a nihilism afoot, has been since the first Trump term. It's not working for me. Let's burn the damn thing down. And that's kind of a germ that's going around the world. It's not limited to us. So these are going to be, strap in, these are going to be interesting times.
I do think you're right about that nihilism. I think it's really tough to communicate a message when that is the pervasive feeling, but I think it's the job of Democrats, if they really want to get through, it's going to be harder than they maybe put the effort in this time.
A lot of people would agree with you.
It is just so lovely to see you.
Oh, it's great.
I'll tell you, it's so nice to have you back in the building. You guys, this is Brian Williams, everybody. We'll be right back with Bridget Everett.
So there you go. That's Brian Williams. And listen, the fact that he's a volunteer fireman, I think is awesome. I think he's generally a nice guy. Seth Meyers, I don't hate Seth Meyers either. I think he's funny. I don't think he's as funny as some of the other hosts I've ever seen, but he's definitely got a good sense of humor. But he's a shill for the Democrat Party. That's obvious. And that's not something that that's why the late night shows are really falling apart. Even Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel, they're all falling apart because people weren't watching the late night shows to get your political opinions. They were there to laugh. And instead they became, propaganda machines, and people didn't want to see that. People watch late night shows to have a good time and relax and kind of push those type of things out of your mind. Now, as I said, I'm going to talk about my version, what I think my version of MAGA should and would be. Because to me, MAGA is like when I was a kid in the 70s, when you talked about the epitome of the auto industry, you used to call the pinnacle of a car the Cadillac of cars, because it was the pinnacle of car manufacturing. But we've lost sight of that. And we've also lost sight, and I'm gonna do a whole video on the median price thing, because we've got lousy consumers in this country and we got greedy corporations. And I think that's contributing to the bad economics that we have and the huge swing from the left to the right in the economy every time we change a president. But I mean, for our economy to work the way it should, there should be days back like when General Motors used to build plants for its employees and make daycare centers, and they paid their employees enough so that they could take their kids on vacations. They could give them great Christmas presents and birthday presents. They could take them down to the local lake on their holidays. They had a decent house. They could afford their mortgage. They could afford the car. They could afford their gas. And if somebody wanted to, if an American wanted to, they made enough money to sock a little money way onto the side, and then they could, it may take 5-8 years, and then they save enough money, and then they start their own business, become their own entrepreneur. See, if we got back to that, where Americans could afford to start their own business without going into massive debt, and there's huge taxes and requirements on insurance and employees' rights and all these things, that's what's crushing the American dream right there. That. And we need to get companies to stop sending all our jobs overseas and stop buying everything from China and India and sending our jobs to Mexico. And I think, to me, Donald Trump is trying to say that that's MAGA. I think he goes maybe a little farther than I would in some ways. In other ways, I don't think he goes far enough. But that's what needs to happen. And then here's another thing, too. We got BRICS going on, and yet we've still been feeding the beasts. We've been feeding China the beast, that's what I call it, China, for the last 60 years. And then we want to know why we're going to get burnt by the devil because we've been making a deal with them for the last 60 years. And now, because India is offering cheaper labor, Apple and several other large corporations have decided to move their plants to India. But yet India is taking part in BRICS, which is the financial agreement between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and Saudi Arabia. Now, we're taking away the factories from China and the employment from China to give it to India, but yet India is working against us. And I think Donald Trump needs to say, listen, you get no American businesses in India until you get out of BRICS. And if they don't want to do that, then America should work with its own allies. Something like we should get together with Canada, Australia, Germany, Japan, Korea, England, all the Democrat countries that have free and fair elections and the freedoms to be who you are. And we should work with those countries and work against something like BRICS. And work against, and we could actually crush the economies of those countries without firing a shot, without anybody, no Americans having to die, no English having to die, nobody having to die. We could crush them that way. To me, that's MAGA. Now, it is fair to me about all this talk about these tariffs because that may cause things to go up, but in the long run, we need to bring American industries back. I mean, even something as simple as telecommunications or phone customer service companies for, let's say, like Samsung or any other company. I mean, to have to call every time you call out and all you hear is somebody India on the other end. I mean, those are jobs that Americans would take. And I think the industry and I think our government's lying to you that Americans don't want that. Or if they do, they want an outrageous money. Most Americans just want to be able to pay their bills. They want to be able to pay the rent. They want to make their car payment. They want to make their insurance payment. They want to sock some money away to have a good time on the weekends, maybe go out drinking, have fun, go to a football game. That's what would make America great again. And we've lost track of that. So again, look out for my video because I'm going to discuss, do a whole video on the discussion of the median price. And it's kind of like a little bit what Kamala Harris was talking about price gouging. So anyways, that's my video for today. And I just want you to remember, what burns my ass probably burns your ass too. And by the way, like and subscribe, because if you don't, that burns my ass too. So, like and subscribe, because I said so. And if you don't, it burns my ass. And hopefully it burns your ass too. Thanks for watching.